The Guano War, when countries fought over bird poop. Yep, there was actually a war, a real war, with ships, armies, cannons, all over bird poop. More specifically, guano. But what even is guano? In the 1800s, the world discovered that if you let seabirds poop on a rock for a few hundred years, the result is a magical substance called guano. Basically, Mother Nature's fertilizer on steroids. Rich in nitrates and phosphates, guano made crops grow like crazy. Also, fun fact, nitrates are a key ingredient in gunpowder. So farmers wanted it, armies wanted it, everyone wanted that sweet, sweet poo-poo dust. And the best place to get it? The Atacama Desert in South America, stretching across Peru, Bolivia and Chile. And it was absolutely caked in poo-poo dust. So when industrialization kicked in and global farming started booming, guano became the OG white powder export from South America. It turned poor coastal regions into bird poop gold mines almost overnight. By the late 1800s, a Chilean mining company was harvesting guano in Bolivia's section of the Atacama. All good, because they had a deal. Bolivia wouldn't raise taxes on them for 25 years. Then plot twist, Bolivia was broke. So in 1878, Bolivia tried to suddenly slap a new tax on the Chilean company. Because of this, on February 14, 1879, Chile gave Bolivia a Valentine's kiss on the bum. They invaded the Bolivian port city of Antofagasta. And just like that, the Guano War, also called the War of the Pacific, or the Bird Poop War, was on. Now, here's the spicy part. Bolivia and Peru had signed a secret mutual defense pact years earlier. So when Chile invaded Bolivia, Peru was forced to get involved. Boom. Now it's a full-blown, three-country bird poop war. And you might think, how bad could a war over poop really be? It was brutal. Chile had the upper hand from the start. A professional army, a powerful navy, more guns, more money, and apparently more rage about taxes on poop. They quickly captured the coastline, not just Bolivia's, but huge parts of Peru too. Their navy blockaded ports, their troops marched inland. Meanwhile, Peru and Bolivia were arguing, broke, and under-equipped. One of Peru's biggest heroes, Admiral Miguel Grau, went down in a blaze of glory at sea, becoming a national legend. But legends don't win wars, because Chile did. The war ended in 1884. Chile walked away with all of Bolivia's coastline, making Bolivia landlocked forever, chunks of southern Peru, which they held onto for years, and of course, they got control of the poop mines. And to this day, the beef still isn't over. Chileans still brag about winning the bird poop war. At football games, they taunt Bolivians by chanting, "Vamos a la playa," let's go to the beach, a savage reminder that Bolivia hasn't had one since 1884. And there's even a sarcastic phrase in Chile, crazier than a Bolivian pirate. Because, well, no coast, no pirates. Meanwhile, Bolivia mourns their coastline every year with a full-on national holiday called Dia del Mar, the Day of the Sea. All this over bird poop. And on the topic of bird poop, guess what will happen if you don't hit the like button? A bird somewhere gets assigned to poop directly on your head. So if you don't like the sound of that, go hit that like button. Now, on to the next story. The Boston Tea Party. In 1773, the British East India Company was having a full-on corporate meltdown. Sales were crashing, debts were piling up, and their warehouses were overflowing with tea nobody wanted. So the British government came up with a big brain solution. Let's just give ourselves a monopoly in the American colonies. Force Americans to buy our tea and sneak in a tax while we're at it. And in came the Tea Act of 1773. And on paper, it sounded great. The tea was technically cheaper, but colonists didn't get a say in any of this. To the British, it was just an economic band-aid. To Americans, it was a full-on betrayal. Now, Americans already hated British taxes. They'd been grumbling all about them already. But this This was tea. This was sacred. So, the Sons of Liberty, basically some colonial dudes, decided to throw a tantrum. On December 16, 1773, they dressed up as Mohawk warriors, cause, well, actually, I don't know why, but they did. Snuck aboard 3 British ships in Boston Harbour and yeeted 342 chests of tea into the sea. That's over 90,000 pounds of tea. Gone. That night, Boston Harbour basically turned into one big salty cup of tea, and the British? Absolutely fuming. They hit Boston with the coercive acts, aka you're grounded forever laws. They shut down the entire port, stopped them from governing themselves, and tried to make an example out of the place. But instead of scaring the colonies into obedience, it made all the colonies go, wait, you can do that? So they linked up, formed the First Continental Congress, and basically started planning the USA. So yeah, this whole American Revolution thing, kinda triggered by some tea. The Great Hedge of India. This one's not exactly a fight. It's more just one-sided bullying. As we saw in the previous story, the British Empire loved taxes. And in India, their absolute favourite thing to tax was salt. Salt was life. You literally needed it to survive, and to also just make a half-decent curry. And yet, the British slapped a heavy tax on it because, well, they colonised the place. But here's the twist. Indians weren't just gonna sit there and pay up. They started smuggling cheap salt from the coast and a salt lake way up here out to the rest of India without paying the tax. The British saw this and said, "Oh, you cheeky little muffins," and came up with a solution. An idea called the Inland Customs Line. Basically a hard-to-cross 2,500-mile-long snake on the map, guarded by 14,000 people. For context, that's almost as long as the width of the United States. It was partly made up of rivers or rough terrain that was hard to pass, and for the parts that were easier to cross, here, guess what they did? They grew a hedge. Yes, a real hedge, like bushes, 12 feet tall. British officers spent decades planting, pruning, and fortifying this big bush. They had actual hedge maintenance teams. Imagine being in the military and your job is literally to trim a bush. Did it work? Kind of, but also not really. Smugglers got smart, guards got corrupt, salt still flowed. And for over 30 years, this hedge was the British Empire's only answer to illegal seasoning. After that, they realized they could just take control of the salt lake, where a whole lot of the salt was made, and tax it right then and there, which seems a whole lot more logical. And that's where I'll leave it for today. Poop, tea, and salt. Humanity will fight over just about anything. So if you learned something new today, let me know down in the comments. And remember, hitting the like button might just stop a pigeon with suspicious aim. See you in the next one. Bye.